Hi, everyone. Welcome to the recap with Julie. Today, we are going to be discussing Jodi Hildebrandt. So, as you know, Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt have been sitting in jail since the end of August, waiting for their trial dates. Well, they have both had their trial dates, and they both chose to waive their preliminary hearings and go straight into plea deals, basically. Ruby Franke went first, then Jodi Hildebrandt. Jodi Hildebrandt basically gave the exact same plea deal agreement that Ruby Franke had given, except for a couple changes. So we're going to discuss some of that. As you know, this is Ruby Franke. Beside her is Jodi Hildebrandt. The two of them were working together on this connections website, relationship, whatever you want to call it. They ended up working together on this. Jodi Hildebrandt did own it. And Ruby Franke, once she stopped doing her YouTube vlogs, ended up joining Jodi. And the two of them were doing podcasts and recording in the basement of Jodi Hildebrandt's home. Well, Jodi Hildebrandt's home is now up for sale for $5.3 million. And we are going to be checking out the pictures of her home as well. And I do believe you can see the safe room that was in the basement. Again, no children were kept in this safe room that we know of. But at first, it was rumored that the kids were found in that. So I believe we will be able to see those in the pictures. So to start off, a little recap. The plea deal that Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt passed in was absolutely horrific. It was way worse than any of us had ever suspected. We knew about the two youngest, the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old, basically being kept prisoner in Jodi Hildebrandt's home. However, the details that came out were just disgusting. It makes you wonder what we don't know about. If they did admit to these, is it because they were on video, that they had, text messages? I don't know, but they did admit to horrific things that they were doing to these two younger children. So I'm sure there's lots more that they didn't admit to. Some of the things that they did admit to, so they are both being charged with 4 counts of child abuse. The 4 counts have been lowered from the 6 they were originally going to be charged with. 2 of those counts were malnutrition and starvation to cause death. Those were dropped. So they did not agree to plead guilty to those 2, but they did plead guilty to the other 4. So Ruby Franke, like I said, had gone first. In her plea deal, she admitted to horrific things. Some of the things were the fact that she would make her 10 and 12-year-old do yard work outside. Now, yard work, I guess, for most people wouldn't be a big deal. However, it was in Utah in the middle of summer and temperatures were getting over 100 degrees. And she would make them go out in bare feet and do this yard work without being able to have access to water or fluids or food for that matter. And as a punishment, she would make them stand in direct sunlight for hours at a time. They were also forced to stay outside for extended periods of time through the day and even the evening and night. She also was getting them to basically eat specific food that was extremely bland and flavorless, like a piece of chicken breast and some plain rice, while everyone else in the family, aka Jodi and Ruby, were eating whatever they wanted to have. So, and that was when they were allowed to have food. So there was a ton of food related situations involved there. What ended up happening is the 12-year-old boy attempted to run away in July. He was caught. He was brought back, and that's when the restraining apparently started. That is when she started to tie him. So at one point, she would tie his wrists and his ankles and have him on his belly and then attach the wrist and ankles together. So he was almost in an arched position, which the paramedics and doctors said it did extensive damage to his tissues and his muscles from being in this position, as well, of course, as disintegrating and opening his skin from his wrists and his ankles. And what they would do is they would put this homeopathic remedy on top of it, which ended up being like some sort of chili powder or cayenne pepper mixture, I guess it was, with honey. And they would smear it into the open wounds, put duct tape around it, and then put the handcuffs right back over the duct tape. So it was absolutely horrific. She also admitted to kicking him with boots on. She admitted to covering his mouth and nose to restrict oxygen. And she also admitted to holding his head, his face underwater so that he couldn't breathe. Just disgusting. She's also admitted to those things with her 10-year-old daughter, but she's also admitted to forcing the 10-year-old to run apparently on dirt roads with no shoes on. So they did say in the reports that when they found her, her feet were extremely damaged and cut and broken and things. It was just awful. So she has admitted to that. In Jodi Hildebrandt's plea agreement, she admitted to those things that Ruby did, except for the three specific things: the kicking with boots, the holding underwater, and the putting the hand over the mouth and nose. So Jodi did not agree to that. However, the one addition that she had in there was either forcing or even physically making the 10-year-old daughter jump into cactus bushes. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's absolutely horrific what they did to these kids. Personally, I feel like there was an awful lot more if they've actually agreed to these things. And I feel like there's a reason they agreed to those. I feel like they must have, like I said, recordings of it or text messages or some sort of evidence that they did these things in order for them to plead guilty to this. But that's what we've got. So now what's happening? February 20th is going to be the sentencing for both women. This will tell basically how long they're going to get for their crimes. And then apparently a parole board will later decide, like a few months after that, whether or not they're going to be eligible to get paroled or not. What I want to look at right now, though, is Jodi Hildebrandt's home. So like I said, her home is now up for sale. It is $5.3 million. And let's bring up the pictures. So here we go. I'm going to make this big screen so you guys can see it a little bit better. So this is the outside of Jodi Hildebrandt's home. So we have all seen this picture before. This was, of course, in the news, and I think we've all seen this. This is the outside of her home, but the pictures of the pool area are insane. So this was the outside of the home. It was absolutely beautiful. It is so unfortunate what was going on inside this home because, like I said, actually is an absolutely beautiful home. The decorating inside isn't bad until you get to the bedrooms, and I'll show you that in just one moment. So let's just go through some of the pictures. So like I said, this is the outside. Now, this is what I believe could be the safe room. So if we zoom in, I think this looks like the safe room. So it definitely has some sort of opening. It is secured. It looks like it's recessed into the wall. I believe that would be the safe room that they referred to. The police initially, when they raided Jodi Hildebrandt's home, this was locked and they could not get into it. They didn't have the key. So they were trying to get in there. They were wondering if the 14 and 16-year-old children of Ruby Franke were in this home, in this room. And it turns out there was, in fact, no one in this room, according to the search warrants. So again, here's the outside of the home. More pictures from the inside. And there is another angle of what I believe is probably the safe room in Jodi Hildebrandt. And the safe room, of course, is built for numerous reasons. I mean, tornadoes, weather issues, stuff like that. But it's almost like a panic room as well if something goes on, right? All right, let me go into some of the other pictures. These are some beautiful pictures of her kitchen. I mean, the place is gorgeous. Let me keep going here. I've got to show you. I did find it a little bit telling that her laundry room is completely empty. So all the shelves and storage in her rooms are completely empty. It's like she's already moved out. I don't know when this happened, if it's been since she's been in jail, obviously. But like I said, everything's empty. All her closets, there's no clothing. I'm assuming it's possibly staged. This bedroom doesn't look as bad, but let's get into some of the other bedrooms here. I can't imagine someone staging a home with these bedding sheets. But so there is an orange bedroom. So orange bedding in one room. There is this kind of teal bedding in another room. And then there was what I'm assuming might be her own bedroom. I think I just passed it. Let me go back and grab it. Might have been the master bedroom, but it's purple. So let me just grab it and show you guys what I'm talking about here. So I feel like this could have been, her bedroom. There it is there. So I can't imagine them staging that with all the bright colors of the bedding, but who knows, right? But all the closets are empty. And again, it is kind of telling. I mean, did Jodi Hildebrandt know that she's going to be going away for several years? Now, each count that they're charged with has a possible 15-year sentence with it, as well as fines, of course. And her niece, Jessie, has done an interview and said that she spoke with someone who says that Jodi's probably going to get the max time. So I'm going to bring that up right now for you guys, and we will watch that and talk about it. So this is an interview with Sidebar from Law and Crime with Jodi Hildebrandt's niece.
Yeah, so I was able to speak to the DA a little bit that evening, and he informed me that the likelihood of her getting maximum sentencing is incredibly high, that she's most likely going to be getting the 60 years.
Wow, that we were wondering that because again, 15 years is the max on each church, and again, look, the way that we understand it as well, and from Utah law is it really isn't the judge who sets it. It's more like this is what punishment is, and it's up to a board to determine if she'll ever be granted parole. So, I mean, that's our understanding about it.
Yeah. So he also told me that it's about 8 months from now that board will be put together, and that's going to be like the first parole hearing will be in as little as 8 months.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be focusing, like what the DA said, to be focusing on, like having a written statement of harm and showing up to those hearings. And hopefully that this will.
Okay, I'm going to stop there just for a second. So if you're not familiar with who Jodi Hildebrandt's niece is, that's Jessie. Jessie is Jodi's niece who basically experienced the same things that those two young children experienced. Now, Jessie was older. I believe she was about 16, but Jodi Hildebrandt was doing the same things to her. She was restraining her. She was degrading her, putting her down, accusing her of being addicted to, inappropriate videos. Like the list goes on and on. She wanted justice, and she kind of feels like she's getting it now. That is one of the reasons they think that Jodi Hildebrandt may get the max sentence. She is not innocent in any of this. She, has things on her file that do not look good. And this is one of the reasons that they're thinking she may get the 60 years, at least, close to that. Whether or not Ruby Franke gets that or not, we don't know. But let's continue with Jessie and see what she has to say.
After this first one, that it will be pushed years down the line.
Well, first of all, were you there when she pled guilty, and do you plan to appear at her sentencing?
I was not there. I didn't want to be there, or at least I was pretty torn on whether I wanted to be there or not. I won't be there for her sentencing simply because of just the timing of it. I'll be in Europe. I would have liked to be there for the sentencings. I will be there for the parole hearing, most likely. That's, I think, where a lot of victims, like that's the important time for the victims to come forward and to convince the board that she doesn't deserve any sort of parole.
I thought it was really interesting when you said that it didn't seem genuine, her reason for pleading guilty. Obviously, from a legal point of view, there's a number of reasons why I think she did it. You had Ruby Franke agreeing to testify against her. Evidence looks really bad, but you don't believe in any way. You don't believe in any way she feels bad about what happened.
Not even a little bit. No, it's so wild because something that she would constantly accuse me of when I was living with her. So when the abuse started getting really bad, people in my church started noticing that I didn't look well and that something was wrong. And they started talking to the bishop or the pastor, the person in charge of our ward, just like their concerns. And the Bishop Bangader, told Jodi these people's names. And then we would go to their home and she would coach me in the car and tell me exactly what I was going to say. And then she would go in with me and I would have to apologize to them for manipulating them into feeling sorry. I believed that Jesus was working through Jodi and that Jodi was saving me. And so it's just darkly ironic that watching her in the pews, like at the sentencing, just like looking so sad, and then telling like her attorney coming out and saying something like that, it's just like, wow, oh, you're manipulating all that time you were telling me that that's what I was doing was just a projection because that's what you would do and are doing. Like, it's like you don't get accused and like convicted of child torture and then suddenly are like, oh, I just really care about these children's healing. Like, that's not what happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I completely agree with Jesse on that. I feel like if you have been held accountable and responsible for torturing children, and then you plead guilty, you're not saying, oh, I feel bad for what I did. You're pleading guilty because you know there's evidence as to why you got caught. And in order to get a lesser sentence, you need to plead guilty and hopefully you will get less time. There's no way she feels bad for this. Anyone who can do that to children, they don't feel bad about it afterwards. That is kind of what I want to chat with you guys today about was the Jodi Hildebrandt situation. I will definitely be covering this. If you want to see some of my other videos, I have lots of updates as to what's going on with Ruby and Jodi. Make sure you subscribe, guys. I'm definitely going to be updating as more comes out. February 20th, like I said, is going to be the sentencing, and I will definitely be posting for that. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And like I said, hit subscribe.